we're going to be talking about, or focusing on Middle Egypt, and to shed more light, as always, we're most delighted to be joined with our guest in the studio, Mr. Samir Abbass, an Egyptologist and a researcher. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Samir. Good morning. And now we want our audience to know more about the important monuments in Middle Egypt.
Sure. So first of all, I'm very thankful to be with you today. That is episode number 7, as far as I remember. I don't keep tracking, by the way. I think that's number 7. So we started this episode for a reason. This reason, we need to attract the attention of people all over the world of how much wonderful monuments and history we have, what we call hidden treasures, and these are things which is not normally on the tourist agenda. Very few people going there, but it is had a great importance. The only reason why people didn't go there because there is not much information about these sites. So that's why we are doing this. And this site is not only historical and cultural sites. Some of them, they are natural sites as well, which is like Jebel Olba and other natural protected area. So we covered different areas. We covered Cairo and around the Mediterranean region. We covered Aswan and Nubia. We covered the Egyptian desert, the Western desert, and the Eastern desert. So we covered different geographical parts. And today I'm planning to talk about this area, which is called Middle Egypt. So Egypt in the ancient time has been classified into mainly two geographical areas. Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Upper Egypt is the southern part, and Lower Egypt is the northern part. And the reason why the southern part is called Upper Egypt, because it's higher. So if the ancient Egyptians, they drew the map we have it today, it will be the other way around, like an upside down. So in Middle Egypt is the area which is in between. So Middle Egypt is starting from south of Giza, which is like Bani Suef, Minya, and goes all the way till it meets the border of Upper Egypt, which is to the north of Luxor. That is the area we are talking about. I brought 2 maps with me, and one map is a general map of all Egypt, and the other one, which is a map of focusing on Middle Egypt. So unfortunately, Middle Egypt is one of the places along the Nile Valley, which is very much, I will say, that is hardly to be exist in a tour itineraries. So I do many.
We're putting the map on air.
Exactly. So there is a map of Egypt, and there is the following map is a focus on Middle Egypt. So I remember that when I go to Bani Hassan or Tal Amarna, even in the high tourist season, and I ask people there, like the officers, like the guards, how many guests you get, not today, this week. So sometimes their number, even in the high tourist season, where there is a floods of tourists in Giza, in Luxor, in the Valley of the Kings, in the museum, they will say, actually, this week we had like 10 people, and including me and my group, which is like 4 or 5. That's with no exaggeration. With no exaggeration. So I remember that we talked about the reasons behind that. We can talk about that actually. We can remind our audience today about the reason behind that. Is one of the very important reasons is most of the tour itineraries in Egypt is just copy and paste from a previous one, from an old one. So most of the tour operators, they don't have a big experience, haven't received enough training to understand the value of these areas and to promote for that. And the third thing also, there is not much promotions and focusing on Egyptian campaigns on this site, and that's why we are doing what we are doing now in order to get these known.
I think there were so many historical discoveries in Tal Amarna. Important tombs were discovered recently.
Now you are taking me to the details about
it's full of monuments.
Exactly. Tal Amarna is the highlights when it comes to this area. So in Middle Egypt today, I'm planning to talk about Bani Hassan. I'm planning to talk about Dir al-Ahmar, Dir al-Muharrak, which is very famous monastery in this area. Planning to talk about Tal Amarna. Tal Amarna was one of the most wonderful, actually, sites, not only in Egypt, all over the world, because of the deep history and the importance Tal Amarna. So Tun al-Gabal, another very unique site. Also planning to talk about Abydos, the gate to the afterlife of the ancient Egyptians. It was like Mecca for them in ancient Egypt. And
why did they choose
for Dandar? Okay, let's take it step by step. Let's talk about Bani Hassan first. Bani Hassan is a very unique place. Bani Hassan house many tombs, and these tombs is like these tombs is actually over 70 or almost 90 tombs there. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but there is like 6 or 7 of them. They are open for visit now, and these tombs dates back to the Middle Kingdom. So the Middle Kingdom, so we're talking about Middle Egypt and Middle Kingdom now. So the Middle Kingdom is an era of Egyptian history, and that is covering the 11-12 dynasty, roughly speaking, nearly 3,700 years ago. That's roughly speaking this period of time. In these tombs, which has had a beautiful sceneries and decorations, reflects the daily life of the ancient Egyptians back in that time. It is a very good documentaries of how they lived their life back in that time. So, for example, that one of the very famous scenes in tombs or subjects has been handled in details in the tombs of Bani Hassan is army training and wrestling training as part of the army.
This goes back to which dynasty?
So that would those 12 dynasty. 12 dynasty, yes. It's amazing. In one of these tombs, when you go and see that there is a detailed drawings explains different wrestling positions. You know, that's one of the haunting scenes in one of these tombs, and that's showing that how much the ancient Egyptians were enjoying actually their life back in that time. They lived a very luxury life. Much more luxury than we have it today. They have the luxury of traveling, of taking a boats and traveling along the Niles and the lakes and hunting, catching birds, hunting, and doing all that. Yes. And that is very.
And was that only limited to kings or priests, or even the regular, what they called back then peasants?
That's a very good question, actually. So how we know what we know. So what we know it from tombs, which is left by very rich people.
Yes.
So all these tombs, and to have the money actually, to have the ability to build a tomb like this one, to last until today, after like more than 3,000 years, you have to have lots of wealth to make it out of stone, to decorate it very well, using a very durable material to last for that long. Yes. And only rich people will be able to afford that, which is mean that the information we have it now is only the information about this high class, kings, royalties, and noblemen. So I'm pretty sure that the individuals, they have their own. And
now we have a picture for a castle.
Exactly. So that is actually a monastery, one of the monasteries there. I think it is Deir al-Maharra. You know, coming back to the main point, which is very important. So I'm pretty sure that the individuals, like the normal people, they have their way of enjoying life as well. And we see some of the echoes of that in some of the tombs, which is decorated with like the fishermen wrestling after finishing their fishing, after finishing their fishing trip, you know, they start wrestling and practicing sports together. But the problem that, so to have a tomb to last until today, that's extremely expensive. And I'm pretty sure that even the middle class Egyptians, ancient Egyptians back in that time, they were not able to afford doing that. So which is mean that I can say yes, I think that they enjoyed their time as well, but on the other hand, that we don't have much reference left behind the middle class and the low class Egyptians. So going back to Bani Hassan, and we have this detailed scene, which is, I wish actually we can, these photos actually from Bani Hassan, by the way, you know, which is have this beautiful, it is a cemetery. It is a cemetery which is used today by the Muslims community. They're living in the village nearby. The site is named after the village which is nearby, and these mausoleum buildings built with domes, covered with domes. That's the domes which is, you can see it in the background. That is one of the things which attracts the attention of the tourists when they go there. Not only the historical Bani Hassan tombs, but the current cemetery and how the ancient Egyptians, they kept these traditions of buildings and decorating their tombs like the ancient Egyptians, but in a different style. So, you know, a following picture that will be for the scenes, which from Bani Hassan tombs, which is a historical one, the one which dates back to the Middle Kingdom, and it shows, as I mentioned before, that the most unique thing there is the daily life and the wrestling competition. I wish that I think that I have 2 photos of the wrestling competitions. There is more than 99 different wrestling position has been introduced on the wall, detailed one, which is and that was nearly 3,700, 3,600 years ago, which makes you really wonder how sophisticated and how advanced those people back in that time. And apart from that, Bani Hassan also have a very unique scene. This unique scene, it could, if we only focus on this scene, that can bring lots of attention to Egypt. So you know that there is lots of, in history, there is lots of cross. So that's, I think that, you know, so that is actually, that is covering our next point, which is the ancient city of Amarna. So there is the theme which I'm talking about is the one which is before these scenes. So this one is of Al-Mania, which is our next actually tour. In Bani Hassan, we have a very unique scene, which is for you know that there is lots of cross between the biblical history and the ancient Egyptian history. Moses born and grew up here in Egypt. Joseph, he spent most of his life living in Egypt here. Jesus, he visited Egypt for 3 years as well. So there is, and not forgetting Ibrahim, he visited Egypt as well. In Bani Hassan, there is documentation, possibly that is documentation of Ibrahim visit to Egypt with his wife Sarah, with his family. And that's in one of the pictures actually I brought, which is with me. So this subject alone, to introduce that will bring lots of time. There's lots of people. Do you know what the most common tourism in Sinai now, which is connecting Sinai with Jerusalem, with Jordan as well, is the Holy Family trips. They come in big groups.
Religious tourism.
Yes, you know, the pilgrims. So they come to pilgrim to Jerusalem, and they go to the baptism site, which is in Jordan, not the Holy Land, and they come to hike the St. Catherine Mountain, because that's where St. Catherine, actually Musa's mountain, that's traditionally where Musa received the
I think the route of the Holy Family will be put on Egypt's map.
Think about, I talked about this subject before, about not only about the Holy Family, about the Exodus route, which is even more popular. So the Holy Family will be applied to Christians, which is a big population around the world, but the Exodus route, that will be applied for both, for Jewish and Christians and Muslims as well. So we can add that to the Exodus route, or to the biblical route, which is Bani Hassan, because of the scene documenting Abraham visit to Egypt. So moving on, that's actually, that will come to our next topic, which is that's Akhenaten. So I wish we can go a little bit slowly in the photos in this part. So Akhenaten, or Minya governorate, which is a very wonderful Sakhet Tell al-Amarna, that is a famous name today, and it's also named after the tribe or the village which is nearby. But the ancient name of this city was Akhenaten, and Akhenaten is a new capital, was built by we call a dreamer king, which is Akhenaten. So Akhenaten, he is one of the most unique characters, not only in Egyptian history, in the world history. When we talk about Akhenaten, we are talking about his wife Nefertiti as well, you know, which is she's more famous actually. She's even more famous than him. So in this aspect, Akhenaten, he is in documented history, he is the first king to introduce the worship of one god in documented history. So that was a problem, because that was against the mainstream of religion in ancient
Egypt. So the monotheistic religion dates back to the ancient Egyptian history.
Yes, you know, the documented part, you know, from a religious perspective, that dates back to Adam. But we don't have any documentation from Adam time, and that's why when I say that in documented history, that is the first human being to introduce the worship of one god. And it was difficult for him to live with these ideas, to promote for this idea in Luxor. Luxor has this big Luxor temple, very well established, is based on worshiping different gods, and Amun, and that's why he decided to move to a new location and build a new city to be the new capital of Egypt, and the new center. From this center, he was planning that this religion would be a universal religion, not only for Egypt, and that was all about his teachings. That's another unique thing about this period. That was, we have the first human being to talk about universal religion. He built the city, and unfortunately didn't live long enough to live in this city, and he died shortly after, and he was not very old actually when he died. And unfortunately,
was it a normal death, or was there a mystery?
That's another, you know, until now you can only raise your finger that, you know, he died early. We don't have a very strong evidence that he was actually assassinated or killed, but the circumstances in that time possibly give that as a possibility that he might be assassinated because of his ideas. And we will not go far, you know. So Tutankhamun, That is his son, by the way.
Yeah.
And Tutankhamun, actually, he died very young, and there is different theories about his death, which is he was assassinated, the early theory, then he was died in an accident, and the third theory, he died in an arranged accident. That reminds you with Diana, actually.
Yes.
So we were practicing that from a very long time ago. So this city is still sitting there, you know. So the good thing about this place that it has been evacuated shortly after Akhenaten death, and has been, unfortunately, has been used as a quarry in purpose to wipe out the history of this king. That was the priestess of Amun agenda at that time. But the good thing that you can see that you can find the foundation of the buildings, and there is a very active archaeologist, which is he managed to rebuild, to reconstruct some of these buildings. And on top of that, you have tombs already there. Among them, another version of the King's Valley, or the Valley of the Kings of Luxor. We have a smaller version which is in Tel Amarna. That's where he planned to be buried there, together with his wife Nefertiti, his daughters, and I think the Tutankhamun tomb, you know, that was supposed to be there as well before moving Tutankhamun to Valley of the Kings in Luxor. That's where he's tombed now. So that's another site which is hardly being visited. And
Yes. No.
okay, so Tel Amarna in the east bank of the Nile River. So in the west bank of the Nile River, in the far west, we have Tun al-Gabal, another wonderful site, another unique one. So when it comes to Tun al-Gabal, actually, so that is the photo on the screen is for Dondara Temple, and that is Dondara Temple is still like a further topic for us.
Yes.
So if we can slightly come back actually in the photos. So the photos is titled actually with the subject I'm talking about, to Tun al-Gabal. So Tun al-Gabal is a very unique site. Tun al-Gabal has witnessed the worship of a very unique, a very famous ancient Egyptian god, the god Jehuti, the god of wisdom. And you cannot imagine how important this god was back in the ancient time, because you are talking about the source of the knowledge, and the ancient Egyptian civilization was based on knowledge. So Tun al-Gabal was a very rich area as well, a farmland around, and that's why it attracted.
It's rich of tombs.
Rich of tombs, but also rich in other farmland. There was lots of very big farm, fertile lands, and that attracted the attention not only of the Egyptians, of the Greeks as well. And that makes Tun al-Gabal, which is very unique. One of the very old...
Why Greeks?
Okay, so Greeks, when the Greeks invaded after Alexander campaign, after which is when he controlled the Egypt and most of the ancient known world back at that time. So his empire divided between his army generals. So that's what we are talking about. That's Tun al-Gabal.
Yes.
And thanks for pointing that, Karim. So Tun al-Gabal has a cemetery, has tens of thousands of mummified baboons and ibis birds. These are the symbols of Jehuti, the god of wisdom. So, and that's actually a very important thing to talk about, which is you see this building and see the domes, and this is an ecology. I know that I cannot mention the name, but that is started by a lady, which is her dream and her vision to bring people to visit this unique site of Tun al-Gabal. And she built a beautiful, actually, ecology in a traditional style. She suffered a lot, actually. I was following her for a very long time. She put almost all of her wealth in order to preserve the local architecture and to preserve the ancient history and to attract people to come and visit there. So it still is, this is one of the projects which is, can be associated with ecotourism. The ecotourism, which is dealing with nature and dealing with culture as well.
Yes.
So that is a very good example, and which needs more support actually to increase some of these projects. So in Tun al-Gabal, so that is still in Abydos. If we can move, if we can go back a little bit, actually, if still keeping, freezing some of the photos of Tun al-Gabal in the time being. There's 3 or 4 photos I brought for Tun al-Gabal, including a shrine, a tomb built like a temple for a Greek man. He named himself Pet Osiris. He named himself an Egyptian name. So answering your question, why Greeks?
Yes.
So Greeks, they found a great chance of making money and business by moving to Egypt. They immigrated to Egypt from Greek land, and they took advantage. That was the kings in that time. They were Greeks. There was Alexander, the Ptolemy, all of the Ptolemy family, which is ruled for 300 years, including Cleopatra herself. She's coming from a Greek background. So, and that's why, and they found in these places are very good places to start the business, farming, and so on. So, and the unique thing that they adapted the Egyptian culture, they adapted the Egyptian religion, and they worship the ancient Egyptian gods, and that's why we are ending with Tun al-Gabal had a very beautiful monuments from this period by Greeks. So there is many other things which is we can talk about actually later on, which is with
we'd like to thank you, Mr. Samir Abbass, an Egyptologist and an Egyptian researcher. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll further dedicate definitely some more episodes to talk about Egypt's hidden treasures.